Hello, BookTube. My Jack the Bibliophile inspired rereading of Hamlet was wonderful. A fantastic experience. And it caused a Hamlet cascade, as it always does when I reread Hamlet. Uh, and that made me think about presenting a possible Hamlet Starter Kit. This is Shakespeare's most famous play. It's one of the most famous plays ever written. And there've been a ton of books written about it. I thought maybe I'd show you a few of my favorites. Sort of a course in how to do Hamlet if you really want to do Hamlet. Of course, the driving focus of the force of the play is frustration. The same thing with all of Shakespeare's great tragedies. It's not what the textbooks say, some sort of tragic flaw in one individual. It's frustration that something is happening even though it shouldn't, even though it plainly shouldn't. In Julius Caesar, you have frustration with the Roman people, who are fickle. They'll follow anything. So they don't trade, despite the high ideals of Brutus and Cassius, they don't trade Julius Caesar for freedom. They trade him for another dictator who can move them emotionally. The frustration of Lear is Lear's insane demands on his daughters that prove your affection for me. And the frustration of Othello, of course, is the jealousy that Othello feels with no reason whatsoever. It's manifestly simple, and you are maddened when you're watching that he can't come to this simple conclusion. And in Hamlet, of course, the frustration is Hamlet's refusal to act. He's grief-stricken over the loss of his father. He's outraged over the quick remarriage of his mother to Claudius, and is already hateful of what they've done to the memory, or what he thinks they've done to the memory of his father. And then he's confronted by no less an authority than his father's ghost, who tells him, I was murdered. The king is a usurper. He's a regicide. Revenge. And Hamlet swears that he will, and then talks himself out of it. And then a little later on, he overhears Claudius admitting that he killed the king. Again, an unimpeachable source. And he doesn't do it. He talks himself out of revenge for the whole course of the play. And I think that gives it its fascination. It's what a favorite line of Anthony Burgess, where he said that it's a tragedy without a catharsis, and that makes us come back to it all the time. So I thought of course, the place to start with Hamlet is the play itself. And that's why I have this thing that I showed you the other day, where I was just read the play from start to finish as a text. But the next place you might want to go from there is a more scholarly version of the text. Penguin, Bantam, Signet, that sort of thing. They'll have, opening introductions. What were the Elizabethans like? What were the stage conventions of Shakespeare's day? That sort of thing. What were the historical, sources of the Hamlet story? And they pretty much stop there. They don't go into the abstruse stuff, the graduate level stuff. And maybe if you're interested in it, you might want a version like that. And there's no better version than the Harold Jenkins version, the old one that he did for the Art and Shakespeare series. It's well, you can see here, it's vastly bigger than a non-scholarly version of Hamlet, and it has everything, line by line, break by break analysis. It's just incredible. It's an incredible feat of scholarship. And then, if that's not enough, then you might want to move on to a scholar telling you about the play. And there are some choice examples of that. The most famous, once upon a time in a previous generation, was What Happens in Hamlet by John Dover Wilson, where he just breaks down the whole play. He was an a-hole, but he was a great teacher. And he just breaks down the play scene by scene. What happens? What can we infer? What major things that we think ought to happen actually we realize don't? All that sort of stuff. He's great at listening for silences, for the dog that doesn't bark in the night, that sort of thing. And the same thing is true of this one. It was a little bit less well known. This is Bernard Grenbinner's. This is The Heart of Hamlet. I don't know. This has probably been out of print for a very long time. I go back to it often. This is from 1960. And I think it was reprinted throughout the 60s, but I don't think much after that. And I go back to it often. He was an even bigger a-hole. Something about Hamlet brings out the a-holes and scholars. He was an even bigger a-hole than John Dover Wilson, and had all sorts of iconoclastic views about the received understanding of the play, from Hamlet's indecision to Claudius's guilt to a bunch of other things. It's very, very thought-provoking. If you can find a copy and you're interested in reading about that sort of thing, it's well worth your time. And then another a-hole, I'm afraid. This time a theatrical a-hole. This is Harley Granville Barker, and this is his preface to Hamlet. He did a bunch of Shakespearean prefaces, and he earned his right to do them the hard way, because before he did them, for years, he put on Shakespeare. So he comes to his discussion of Hamlet from a less theatrical standpoint than some other commentators, and he's very, very much worth reading. All of his stuff on Shakespeare is worth reading, but I think his Hamlet is especially good. And then when you're done with all of them, you might still want more, and you might want to know, in addition to single commentators, what about everybody else? And for that, there is a great book. Now, you might think I'm going to hold up the Norton Critical Hamlet, but I'm not. It feels a little disloyal. It's a wonderful edition. But the thing I have in mind is Hamlet, Enter Critic. This is by Claire Sachs, and she brings together everybody about Shakespeare. It is the best. It was meant just as a simple textbook, but it's so much more than that. It's so much better than that. You get everybody in here. You get Johnson and Hazlitt and Shaw and T.S. Eliot and Sigmund Freud, everybody. There are great selections of famous literary reactions to Shakespeare throughout the book. It's the real key with a book like this is not that you do it, but how well you do it, how your ear is for the people that you're picking. And Claire Sachs doesn't pick any duds. It's just a wonderful book. Again, if you can find it. This is a particularly frustrating starter kit because most of these books are not findable, not readily anyway. So again, I stand ready at the Brattle if you want me to look for these. But I thought that I would show you those. This is a sort of a Hamlet starter kit of Hamlet and pertinent criticism. And I wanted to end with my strong recommendation to you. Which is not even that you find a great audiobook version. Of course, that's a great idea. LibriVox, for instance, is free, and their audio version is really, really good. And there are a bunch of others. And not even that you rent any of the really good film versions of Hamlet or a really bad one like the Kenneth Branagh. My real urging to you is to find a stage production of Hamlet somewhere near you and go and see it, preferably more than once, so that you can see how the cast handles it 2 nights in a row or 2 different nights. But even if you can't do that, and I realize a lot of people can't do that, that's a terrible shame. Every community should have a thriving amateur theater group, and so many of them don't. Even if you can't do that, in fact, especially if you can't do that, preferential to that, I strongly advise a game. It is the most fun you will ever have indoors. Find a group of friends who are willing to do a live reading of Hamlet, where each person gets a part. No need to memorize things. No, you can have the text out in front of you. Agree on a text, and each person gets a part. They don't have to memorize it. They should just read it a few times themselves in private, especially out loud, so that they're ready, so they're familiar with what they're going to do. I tell you, not only is it a lot of fun, a huge amount of fun, to do a play together, sort of a live action book group, not only is that a lot of fun, but it teaches you things about the play. It really does. That no critic can really convince you of until you've tried it yourself. It's an amazing experience. So that's how I want to end my Hamlet starter kit, by strongly urging you to perform Hamlet. Get a bunch of friends together, either enough for all the parts or double up parts, and do it. Talk it out. Actually do a verbal presentation yourself rather than listen to somebody else's. It's eye-opening. Take my word for it. And I'm going to leave it there for now. I'm very glad that I reread Hamlet and then did the Hamlet Cascade. And I'll see you soon. Book 2. Thank you.